Okay, in this next section, we're going to work on actually putting together our blocks. So as you can see, I've got two here. They're two different sizes because they're from two different quilts, but I just wanted to show you for visual purposes. I just wanted you to be able to see. You can see when I did my first quilt, I did not block them. The points are rounded around the corners, or they're not points at all, I'm sorry, they're rounded. So when you put it together, it was easy enough to work with, but what I did end up doing is after the quilt was assembled, I didn't really like it with those corners rounded because they kind of pulled in a little. So I ended up having to go in and block the quilt afterwards. And that is very doable. But when I did it the second time, I actually would recommend, and I blocked them as I went. And you don't have to use anything expensive. I actually just used a piece of the foam flooring, you know, the mats for little kids, and marked the a 6.5-inch square, which is the finished size that this is with the stitching on the outside. And to find that, you just measure once you're done, because everybody's is going to be a little bit different depending on how tight or loose or what type of yarn you decide to use or what size block you decide to do. So what I recommend is once you get the blocks done, do 3 or 4 of them, and just measure the center, just like you would on a quilt when you're doing borders. You just measure the center, length and width, and figure out what the common number is. They should come out to about the same size, but just figure out what that number is, and then mark a square with a marker on the foam pad. You can use a piece of foam flooring. You can go to your local dollar store or hardware store and get one of those, just those little cheap knee pads for gardening, the foam ones. All of that will work perfectly. It's all you need. And then you can take some shish kebab sticks, you know, for when you use skewers that you use, the wooden ones. You can get these at the grocery store in the cooking aisle. And that's all I used. I cut them down and I made holes in the corners, and I used in a couple on each side. So I ended up with about 8 skewers per, and I squared them off. And you can see it just is a little bit nicer. It's easier to find your corners when you're putting the blocks together. And when you're done with your quilt, you're done. You don't have to worry about squaring it up then. So I would just really recommend not skipping that step. It was well worth it, and I'm really happy I did it. The other thing we're gonna do is we're gonna use Fashion Crochet 3, size 3 thread. Size 3 is the only one called Fashion Crochet, but there's a couple different brands on the market that you can buy this at. And that is what I used for doing it. I've tried both brands. They both worked equally well, so that's not a problem. And you're gonna use that same thread for your blanket stitch as well as doing your crochet. And what I really like about this is it just has a really beautiful sheen. It's really nice. It's almost like a thick thread more than a yarn, but you can certainly use yarn. You just need to adjust your hook size and realize that the overall style, look and feel of your quilts as well as the size of it are just going to be a little bit different depending on what you use. I really like this because I use my fusion quilts for table toppers, and it just has that beautiful grandma's crocheted vibe to it, which I was really going for. So I've really been happy with these threads. Like I said, both brands are really good. I haven't had any issues, but I wanted to just take a moment to show you that. So then what I was gonna do is show you how to put these together. So we're gonna start actually assembling our quilt, and we start with our first block. And what we'll do is we will, sorry, let me get this out of the way. Your first block is going to actually be your bottom corner. So if you are right-handed, where you start your yarn is going to be the bottom right corner of your quilt. And we're gonna build this quilt to the left and up. So you'll start with row 1 all the way on the bottom right, and you're gonna work right to left, just like you would normally with crocheting. For the rest of the rows though, we are gonna actually work left to right. And I know that seems a little confusing, but I'm gonna explain it to you, and please use your diagram that I've included with your pattern, because if you follow those arrows, it'll tell you which stitches to use and when, and it's all gonna make sense. Row 1 is the only row that's done differently. The rest of them are all done the same. And once you get the hang of the pattern, I promise it's gonna go really quickly because you're gonna be able to just move right along. So with row 1, we're gonna start, like I said, down in the bottom corner. And if you are left-handed, you can use the same exact pattern, just work in the exact opposite direction. You'll still work bottom to top. You're just gonna work left to right starting, and then from there on out, you're gonna work in the opposite direction, but the same bottom to top. So what we're gonna do is, you're gonna put your yarn on there, and you're gonna start in that very first corner. And we're just gonna join it with a slip stitch. Oops. Once you have that on there, then you're gonna do another single chain right in that same corner. Once you have that single chain, oh, it's making a liar out of me, it doesn't wanna come through. There we go. So once we get that single chain done, the pattern for pattern A, which is what we're gonna be doing here, is 3 chains. 1, 2, 3 chains. You will skip your next step, and then you will single crochet in the next one. And for this part, and you're just working up the sides, what you're gonna end up with is 13, 1, 2, 3. You're gonna end up with 13 loops or chain 3 spaces up the top of your block. And the reason that we're doing this is 1, 2, 3, and we'll do one more and I'll show you. So the reason we're doing this is when we go to assemble this block, we're gonna be working, you have your chains. When we go to assemble it, we're gonna be working with the blocks put together, and you'll do hop back and forth between the two. And these are actually gonna serve as the space that you're going to connect the blocks in. And I'll show you that in the next step. So what we'll do with this is I'm gonna go ahead and single crochet and chain 3 all the way up the outside, across the top, and then down the left side of this block. Don't worry about the bottom. The bottom's gonna get done at the very end. But I'm gonna go to all 3 of these, and then I'm gonna stop right here, and I'm gonna show you how we're gonna connect the next block, as well as work that pattern B. So I will be right back. Okay, and you see here, we've gone around, we've done our 3 sides, and we've completed the 3rd side here by just doing a single crochet. We stopped there. In the other corners up here, you can see we did a single crochet, chain 3, and single crocheted in the same stitch before you go around each side. When you get to this point right here, we're not going to do that part here. We're just going to do a single crochet, and then what we're going to do is we're going to put our thread back through our hook. We're going to take the next block and figure out which is your right side, and you're going to put it up against the back of your first block that you just finished. And now we're going to work with the next side of the block facing you. So once you get to this point, we have our single crochet in the corner. We're nice and attached. You're going to chain 2. So we got 1, 2. And then you're going to single crochet into the corner stitch of your next block. And that's all it is, and they're attached. Now we are ready to go into pattern B. Once you get the hang of this, you'll realize pattern A is always worked on the individual block. Pattern B is always worked when you are connecting the 2 blocks to each other. This 2 chain and then connect on the bottom row, that's how we connect each block, and we'll go 6 blocks across doing that. Once we get to the next row, we're going to attach the bottom of the next block of row 2 to the top of the block of row 1. So we'll only use that chain 2 stitch here to connect it when you're doing the very first block of the row. And again, I'll show you that when we get into it, but just want to point out that only for row 1, the very bottom row, do we connect each block with this chain 2. So we've chained 2, we've done a single crochet into the very corner stitch right here, and now we're ready to start pattern B. And what pattern B is just a simple chain 1, and now I'm going to single crochet into the top of the loop, the very first chain 3 loop that we created here. And remember I told you that we were going to come back and we were going to use these to connect between the 2 blocks? That's all this is. So now we've done a single crochet into the top. We're going to chain 1, and we're going to do just like on the other side where we skipped a stitch. We're going to skip a stitch, and we're going to single crochet right here. I promise it's going to get easier. Chain 1, single crochet in the top of the next one from the first loop, from the first block, chain 1, skip 1 and single crochet in this one again, chain 1, we're going to hop across. So we're just going to keep doing this same exact pattern all the way up the side. And you'll see when you go to look at it after we finish. So I'm going to show you this real fast. Let me just secure it back over here. And you can see we're just working with the 2 back to back. It makes it easy to not have to shift around. You can just keep them held together and just keep working. And you'll see, let me pull this out so it doesn't come apart. One, you're connecting and it's got the same look on both sides, and you're creating this lacy doily kind of effect, that nice lacy feminine look to it. But your stitches, by chaining 1, you're creating that same loop on this side, and you're hopping back and forth, and your stitches are lining up because you're skipping 1 in between just like you did on this side. So everything's going to line up, and we're going to keep working until we get to this corner right here. And once we get to this corner, we're going to single crochet in here and then chain 1, and we're going to single crochet right back in this corner. So here we did, on this side we did a single crochet, chained 3, single crochet to create this corner loop. On this side it's the same basic concept, but just like we did here, where we chain 1, single crochet in the loop, chain 1, single crochet back in that same stitch again, and it's going to create its own loop on this side, and the whole thing is going to run parallel in design straight up the side. So I'm going to finish up the side and I will be right back. Okay, so we've worked down, we've joined these 2 sides together. You can see they're still connected, it's even down, and I'm at the corner. So I'm just going to show you the corner real fast just so you can see what I was referring to. And I've single crocheted on this side, I've chained 1, so now I'm at my corner stitch. I'm going to single crochet in my corner, oops, chain 1, and then I'm going to single crochet into that corner loop that I was telling you. So I'm going to pop it in there, single crochet, chain 1, and then I'm going to come back and single crochet again in my corner a second time. And when you look at that, you can see it's going to have that same loop effect. So now we are to the top again, and right now is where we would jump right back into this pattern A that we used here, because we are only working on the individual block, we're not attaching anything to it. So it's the easiest way to remember. If we're working on just our block, we use pattern A. When we're connecting the 2 blocks, we use pattern B. And that's going to be the same logic that runs through the entire quilt. It is always going to be this side right here. And when you're connecting the rows, that you use that pattern B. The rest of the time, it'll all be this pattern A. So right now, we're going to jump in and do pattern A again. You will do it down across the top and then come back down to the side. And when you reach this corner down here again, you would chain 2, hold up the next block to the back again, and then work pattern B to the top. It's that easy, and it's going to be that easy through the whole thing. So I'm going to go ahead and stop, and I'm going to come back later and I'm going to show you how to do the joining of the rows. So I'll be back.